Hey guys, Oscar here, and I hope you guys are having an amazing day today. Today is November the 30th, 2025, and today I spent the day gathering reliable information from reliable sources, from trusted sources about what's going on in Venezuela. I learned a lot of things that happened recently, and I'm talking about the past 8 years or so, and it's pretty interesting. So let's go ahead and get started. Back in 2016, during the first Trump administration, the Trump administration was working with the opposition leaders in Venezuela. At the time, it was Guaidó. He was the leader at the time. And they were working on implementing sanctions to be placed on Venezuela. And the opposition only wanted sanctions to be placed and no military intervention. And the Trump administration, as well as the opposition leaders in Venezuela, they were working to have a regime change. They implemented the sanctions, no military force was used, but the sanctions were not enforced. Therefore, the regime continued to get the income sources and they continued to get stronger. The Trump administration ended and we had the Biden administration. But we also had one more thing. We had the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected the entire globe. And during that time, the sanctions placed on Venezuela were not enforced at all. Therefore, the regime continued to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And in fact, as of 2025, the regime continues to be in play. Now we are at the year 2024, and in July 28th, 2024, Venezuela had presidential elections. Legally, Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez won the elections by 70%. Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo had 70% and Maduro had about 30%. But since he is pretty much a dictator, he said no, he stayed in power, and he continues to be the legit dictator of Venezuela. Now we are in the year 2025. Trump is the president, and the Trump administration is working along with the opposition leader in Venezuela. In this case, or at this time, it is Maria Corina Machado. Maria Corina Machado may want different things. She, of course, wants the sanctions to continue to be in place on Venezuela, and likely she wants military force to be used in Venezuela. And how do we know that? Well, we know that back in 2018-2019, no military force was used to take the regime out, and the sanctions were placed, but the sanctions were not enforced, and the regime got stronger and they stayed in power. At this time, they can't play the same play because they're going to fail. Therefore, we know that the sanctions are in place, and we likely know that military force may be wanted by the opposition leaders because now we have a strong show of military force in the Caribbean by the United States. They have aircraft carriers, boats, airplanes, helicopters, just to mention a few. So as of yesterday, November 29, 2025, the Trump administration had stated that the airspace in Venezuela should be considered closed. This is likely due to the possibility of airstrikes in Venezuela, but very strategic airstrikes in Venezuela. Something that the opposition leaders in Venezuela must understand. They have to understand that if military forces are used inside of Venezuela, the opposition leader or the new administration has to be in charge and pick up the pieces or all the damage that it could be done. And a lot of people are going to ask, why would the United States want to get into Venezuela's business? Well, it is of national interest for the United States to get into Venezuela's business because Venezuela is being used as a playground for China, Russia, Iran, Nicaragua, and Cuba. They're pretty much using Venezuela for whatever they want. And they are getting the oil, precious metals, gas, and other resources that Venezuela has. It is of national interest for the United States to be involved because now you have China, Russia, Iran, Nicaragua, and Cuba, of course, they have it right at your backyard. And you don't really want that. You want the United States to be the leader, at least in America. You want them to be the big boys, right? Something that happened back in 2018 and 2019 is that the Republicans and Democrats were in agreement, meaning the Congress and the Senate were all in agreement that a regime change had to happen in Venezuela. Now, at this time, the government is somewhat divided, and right now, Trump is from the Republican Party, and we have some Democrats that are against him, and they make things a little bit tricky. But ultimately, a regime change is needed in Venezuela for Venezuela to continue to prosper. Now, there are some ideas that there were some type of plans for Maduro to leave on its own, but we have to keep in mind that Maduro is somewhat Cuba's puppet, and if Maduro gives up, then Cuba may do something to Maduro, and let's say Maduro goes to Iran or Russia, likely the Cubans are going to go look for him. And that's another issue that we have here. The best thing is for Maduro to leave on his own and eventually pay the prices of all the bad stuff that he has done to Venezuela. But you don't want Cuba to be looking for him in other countries and to take him out. So those are difficult situations, and that's something right way beyond my pay grade. So in conclusion here, the Trump administration has been working to change the regime in Venezuela since at least 2018, 2019, at the time with Guaidó. The sanctions were implemented, but the sanctions were not enforced, and no military force was an option at that time. And we all know what happened. It did not work. So therefore, the regime remains in place, and we are where we're at right now. Now, the opposition leader is someone different at this time. We have Maria Corina Machado, we have Edmundo Gonzalez, and in my opinion, and my opinion only, I believe that they want the sanctions, but they also want military force to be used in Venezuela at this time. Likely, that's what may happen. And why do I say that? Is because the airspace in Venezuela is pretty much shut down. Guys, this is a story that will pretty much evolve every single day, and who knows what's going to happen overnight or tomorrow. And this is something that I will continue to update, and let's see what happens. If you found this video helpful, click like, subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.